Hi, everyone. This is Max Jacobs. I'm Managing Partner and Director of Research for North America for Edison. Today, I'd like to welcome Tim Oldham, CEO of AdAlta. Hi, Tim.
Good morning, Max. How are you?
Great. So maybe you can just start by giving us a brief overview of what AdAlta does.
Yeah, AdAlta is a listed Australian drug discovery and development company. We have a proprietary platform we call our Eyebodies, and we use Eyebodies as a tool for discovering novel therapeutics against drug targets that have really challenged traditional antibodies for many years. And this enables us to address diseases with significant unmet needs.
Great. And maybe you could just expand on what exactly are Eyebodies and what advantages might they have over traditional monoclonal antibodies.
Eyebodies are what's called a single domain antibody. They're a very small format antibody found only in a couple of species, camels and sharks, namely. The advantages of these eyebodies are that they're very small size and they're much longer specific binding domains, enable them to access drug targets that are more complex and more buried, if you like, more inaccessible to a traditional antibody. Traditional antibodies are really good at addressing targets on flat surfaces, but many of the targets that we want to address are buried in membranes, for example. They are very difficult to access binding pockets, and these eyebodies are much more able to access those than a traditional antibody. In addition, they have amazing stability, which makes them more suited to a range of different environments. And their small size means that they can also be attached to other components much more easily to create things like antibody drug conjugates, multi-specifics, and so on. The specific advantage of Eyebodies is that we are the first single domain antibody platform to have developed a fully human scaffold. So rather than putting a domain antibody derived from camels or alpacas or sharks into a human, we are administering a fully human protein.
Awesome. And so how large is your Eyebody library?
So we have libraries of more than 10 billion variants of our Eyebodies. These were created by standard biotechnology, synthetic biology techniques, basically taking that scaffold and then inserting random amino acid chains into the regions of the binding loops to create this really diverse library. This enables us to be able to hit a wide range of targets. And we're continuing to refine that library. We've got a significant investment program right now going on to ensure that we can improve not just the quantity of the library, but the quality is also important. And so we can increase the probability that when we discover an eyebody against a target of interest, not only does it bind to that target with the right pharmacology we're looking for, but it's also going to be more likely to be easy to manufacture, more likely to be more stable as we go forward.
Your lead program is 8214, which is being developed for IPF. It's a CXCR4 antagonist. So maybe you could just describe why did you decide to target CXCR4?
So in the early days when we were doing the initial research on the Eyebody platform, CXCR4 was of interest because it was the receptor through which the HIV virus actually infects, or one of the receptors through which the HIV virus infects humans. So there was a lot of research going on around this receptor at that time. As we started working on that, it became apparent that CXCR4 was implicated in many cancers. And then it also became apparent that CXCR4 was implicated in many fibrotic diseases as well. And this was an area where there was a particularly high unmet need and a particular need for new modes of action. And what we found is that CXCR4 is what's called a chemokine receptor. It's implicated in the mobility of cells around the body. And the mobility of inflammatory cells and fibrotic cells, both from the peripheral blood but within fibrotic tissue, appears to be mediated by CXCR4. So the ability to block that in a really specific way, we thought was going to generate a useful and new therapeutic approach to fibrosis.
Great. And I mean, there are other CXCR4 inhibitors in development. Could you just discuss like the competitive landscape?
So there's only ever been one CXCR4 antagonist approved for clinical use up until now. There's a product called Mozobil, and it's used for stem cell mobilization. It's non-specific for CXCR4, and because it also engages another receptor, for example, it also has some significant cardiotoxicity effects. So it's only approved for single use in that stem cell mobilization setting. We happen to know that it's a potent antifibrotic, and so we often use it as a positive control in our experiments, but it's unsuited to chronic use. There's also been interest in developing monoclonal antibodies and small molecules against CXCR4 for cancer, where CXCR4 is believed to be implicated in metastatic disease and the migration of cancer cells to distant parts of the body away from the main tumor. There are several products in development there, probably half a dozen, I would suspect. There are no products being developed attacking or addressing the CXCR4 pathway in fibrosis. So we are a first-in-class molecule in that respect.
Great. And maybe you can now just talk about like, the market for IPF. What does the competitive landscape look like? And maybe like what part of the market you'll be going after.
IPF is a debilitating degenerative disease that affects about 100 to 150,000 people across the US and about 300 to 400,000 people across the world. It is an orphan disease, but unfortunately the prognosis is very poor. Median time from diagnosis to death is less than 4 years. There is no cure for IPF. We are unable to halt the progression of the disease. There are 2 drugs marketed for IPF today. They slow progression, but have very limited effect on overall life expectancy. And they have some very serious side effects. So those 2 drugs alone generate more than $3 billion in annual sales today, yet they don't work particularly well. So the unmet need continues to be high, as evidenced by the number of phone calls we get from patients desperate for access to our trials. There are a number of products in development for IPF. There are 2 phase 3 programs running right now, a couple of phase 2 programs, and then a couple more in phase 1, including our drug, 8214. As I mentioned before, we're first in class in the sense that we address the CXCR4 receptor. The other pathways, or the other drugs, are addressing other pathways in IPF. And we think this is good for IPF because there are multiple pathways and disease mechanisms involved. And many physicians now are talking about IPF as being treated much like cancer, with the need for multi-drug therapy. So the fact that we're a novel pathway means that not only are we potentially available as a monotherapy, improving the rate of decline of respiratory function with fewer side effects, but we're also well set up with a really good safety profile to date to participate in a combination therapy in IPF. So we're really looking at our drug being used not just as a monotherapy, and in fact we're more likely to be working towards, as many of the others are, as a combination therapy, particularly as the 2 marketed products start to come off patent. We're also looking to potentially extend the indications. We've proven that there are a range of other what's called interstitial lung diseases that have elevated CXCR4. Many other fibrotic diseases exist in many other organs. In fact, most organs in the body will suffer from fibrosis. And we've generated a range of preclinical data in animal models of kidney fibrosis, fibrotic eye disease associated with age-related macular degeneration, liver fibrosis, and we're just kicked off some work in cancer, looking at the implications on metastatic disease and the possibility to improve the effectiveness of checkpoint inhibitors. So there's a wide range of possible indication extensions just beyond that initial application in combination therapies in IPF.
You recently provided a clinical update on 8214, a couple of weeks ago. Can you just summarize what you found and what the next steps are for that program?
The data we've just released on 8214 comes from a single dose study in healthy volunteers. That study showed that 8214 was extremely well tolerated at up to 20 milligrams per kilogram, which is above where we think the likely therapeutic dose is going to be. We also had clear evidence of target engagement. We found small transient increases in white blood cell counts and CD34 counts. We also saw slight increases in SDF1, which is the natural ligand of CXCR4. And these are the things you would expect if you manage to block the receptor. Most importantly, we found significant high levels for extended durations of receptor occupancy. So at the top dose, for example, we were able to maintain greater than 50% receptor occupancy for up to 3 weeks on circulating T cells, which is pretty much the only place that CXCR4 is significantly expressed in a healthy volunteer. So that combination of an excellent safety profile, clear evidence of target engagement, and extended duration of receptor occupancy has allowed us to move forward with the remainder of our phase 1 program. The multi-dose component in healthy volunteers will commence in April 2021, and that will now study a 2-weekly dosing interval rather than the week we initially planned. In parallel with that, we'll be running a phase 1b protocol starting in the middle of the year that will explore the effect of CXCR4 elevation in fibrotic disease on the pharmacokinetics and safety of 8214. So we'll be studying that phase 1b protocol in patients, IPF and ILD patients primarily, and we'll also be using a PET imaging agent to visualize the distribution of the drug into the fibrotic tissue of these patients.
Now, IPF has been a pretty active area for licensing and M&A. So what's your partnership strategy for 8214?
Our partner strategy for 8214 is similar to our partner strategy for all of our internal pipeline. Our business model essentially involves developing a pipeline of internal drugs that will wholly own through a phase 1 or phase 2 development, and then out-license to Big Pharma to complete development and commercialization. We also have an external pipeline where we co-develop drugs with parties who bring us technology or a target that our Eyebodies can address. So in the case of IPF, yes, you're absolutely right. The opportunities for early partnering are significant. There is high interest in new drugs in this field. And so we believe there will be a first partnering window for 8214 that could open up as early as the end of 2021 as we start to get that first data from patients on the distribution of the drug, and we confirm the safety profile that we've seen in single dose studies in the multi-dose component. On the other hand, the phase 2 programs are not particularly expensive or large. And so with that in mind, we will reserve the option of progressing to phase 2 ourselves. But that first partnering window we would expect to open towards the end of this year.
Great. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a big step up in kind of the size of the deals that you can get once you've already completed phase 2 and you have that data in hand and it's positive versus what you can get at the end of phase 1. So that definitely makes sense. Now, just switching gears a little bit, can you talk about the GE Healthcare partnership?
The GE Healthcare partnership really provides the first commercial validation of the platform to go alongside the clinical validation of the platform from our phase 1 results on 214. This is a deal where GE are looking for a novel way of hitting a target that's of interest to them, and our Eyebodies can provide it. So the deal involves the discovery of Eyebodies against an enzyme called granzyme B. This is the active molecule that's secreted by T cells, the killer cells of the immune system, when they're trying to clear a pathogen or a cancer from the body. And so this is a really good biomarker that things like checkpoint inhibitors are active in an immuno-oncology setting. And bearing in mind that only 20 to 30% of patients respond to checkpoint inhibitors, they get fantastic responses, but it's really important to know who those responders are early, both in research and development of a drug as well as in clinical treatment. So GE are developing a PET imaging agent to enable clinicians to visualize the production of granzyme B in that immuno-oncology setting. And we're looking for an eyebody that binds to granzyme B that can carry the radio tracer into that location in order to provide that imaging outcome for GE. This deal is what we call part of our co-development or our external pipeline. GE paid a milestone for access to our Eyebody platform and have so far funded all of the discovery costs through to this point in time. We are very close to the end of lead optimization right now, after which we expect GE to take over preclinical and clinical development, and AdAlta will continue to earn milestones and royalties as the tracers progress through those late stages of development and commercialization. That deal has so far generated more than $1 million worth of revenue for AdAlta in the first year to 15 months.
Hey, wonderful. So just to wrap up, what milestones should investors be looking out for over the next 6 to 12 months?
We've got a really busy 6 months ahead of us. The key milestones that we're expecting, firstly, are the commencement of our healthy volunteer multi-dose study of AD214 early in the second quarter of 2021. Early in the third quarter, we'll then look forward to the first PET images coming from patients in the phase 1b protocol. And this will be a really important milestone for us to really understand the mechanism of action and start to understand the effect of disease on the distribution of 214. We're also expecting GE to take over preclinical development of the granzyme B asset that we expect sometime in Q2 as well. We're also expecting in the middle of the year to execute another transaction to add to our external pipeline, so another co-development deal to go alongside the GE transaction. So all of that's really exciting in the next 3 to 6 months. And by the end of the year, we also expect to announce the next 2 targets for our internal pipeline that will leverage our Eyebody technology. So we started the year as a 2-product company. We expect to finish the year as a 5-product company or a 5-asset company with AD214 potentially into a partnering window. And by the end of the year, we will have completed certainly all of the healthy volunteer multi-ascending dose data, which will set us up in first half of next year for IND submissions for phase 2 programs.
Great. You definitely have a busy year ahead. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tim. This was a pleasure, and I think will be very informative for investors to watch.
Thank you, Max. It's been a pleasure talking to you.